everyone, today I wanted to talk a little bit about mental health. I've got lots of content on this channel about things like publishing tips and writing tips and technical stuff, and I've never really sat down and talked about taking care of yourself as the writer, and obviously that's really important too. And I wanted to share with you today some tips that I find really helpful when I'm struggling with anxiety. And I have no official diagnosis, but based on internet searches, I would say that I have high functioning anxiety. I overthink things a lot. I have really high stress levels. A lot of the time I feel quite panicky. I struggle to sleep at times. And despite all of that, none of that really ever stops me from doing things. Actually, if anything, I overdo it. Out of my own anxiety, I push myself too far. And the other thing is that a lot of my own feelings remain quite hidden. It's only really people that are quite close to me that realise just how anxious I feel about things. There's a lot of people who know me that think I'm quite calm. So, like, people are surprised when I say that I struggle with anxiety. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I find helpful, because I think that as writers, we're often very introverted. I would say I'm an extroverted introvert. And we're also, we tend to work from home a lot, and that can make you quite insular, and we live in our own heads a lot, you know, working with our own imagination. And I just think that all of those things can sometimes go hand in hand with feeling quite anxious. So I don't know. I hope that some of these things are helpful if this is something that you can find quite difficult at times. These are things that definitely help me. These are in no particular order. I've got 7 tips. And my first one is to separate work time from your personal time, you know, separate work and play. I think this is quite hard to do, and it's something I've always found quite difficult. When I used to be a teacher, I very much brought work home with me. I mean, literally, I brought work home with me, but also I found it very hard to switch my mind off and say, okay, I don't need to think about my planning or what lessons I'm teaching or the marking I have to do. I am that person that will still have all of that going around in my mind. But I must say that actually physically leaving a building did help to kind of separate it, that I knew that I was now not at work, and I could definitely feel those levels drop as I walked out of the building. And as somebody who works from home, and I think anybody who works from home will find this tricky, and most writers do work from home, it's just so difficult to say, okay, now I have finished work, because you're not physically leaving a workspace. So I think anything you can do to kind of block time out and say to yourself, I am now not working, any of that is really, really helpful. You might find it quite difficult if you've got notifications coming onto your phone, so you might want to turn off notifications for certain things. I personally don't find that too much of an issue, because I'm hardly like inundated. But yeah, that doesn't bother me because I quite enjoy social media and don't find it stressful. But if that's something, like if you're getting emails, so I don't have my work emails on my phone, for example, because I don't want to deal with work stuff when my laptop's closed. I also hide my work stuff. So if I've got books that I'm working on, like proofs of books and paperwork and stuff, it will all get hidden away, because if it's on the side and I walk past it, my head is immediately back in that place. So I would say that work kind of has to be put away almost, and then you move away from it. It's really difficult when you're living in the same space. But I would say kind of blocking time and saying, okay, I've clocked off now, and then putting your work away so you don't see it. I think those two things together can be really, really helpful. My second tip is to try and vary your workspace. Again, when you work from home, this can be really tricky. If you've watched vlogs of me working from home, you'll probably have seen that I work in my bedroom, because I just find it quite helpful to spread all my stuff out on my bed. I find it comfortable. I get quite uncomfortable sitting on chairs. I'm sat cross-legged on this armchair right now, because I can't sit properly. I don't know. So I find it comfortable, and I find it works as a workspace because I can spread myself out. It's probably awful for my back, but there we are. However, working in your bedroom isn't ideal, because obviously that's your rest space. I don't find that causes me too much of an issue, but for some people that really would. But what I will say is that when I'm spending hours upon hours every day sat in my bedroom, that then when I've obviously also slept in there, and it can start to feel like I spend my whole life in there. And I think varying my workspace a little bit really, really helps. So sometimes I'll just work in another room in my house, I'll work in my dining room sometimes, and that really helps. Or I'll just sit somewhere else in my bedroom, so sometimes I sit at my dressing table. Or sometimes I'll go out and work somewhere else. Sometimes, even if I am going to work all day in my room, just going out for a bit at some point during the day and going and running an errand just breaks things up so that I don't feel like I'm just kind of sat all the time. And for me, it leads to a feeling of kind of loneliness and feeling quite insular, and then that increases my anxiety. So just having a bit of a change of environment, even if you just go and work in a cafe, or I sometimes go and work in my husband's office, just doing something to vary things can be really, really helpful, I think, for your mental health. My third tip is that when you've got a particular task that's getting to you, so I will sometimes have something that I'm working on that is making me feel really, really panicky. And often it's when I have to make a decision about something and I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to handle something, and so I'm really overthinking it, and I kind of need to get some perspective. I find that taking some space, taking some time away from that thing is really helpful. Obviously that doesn't mean like just don't do it and miss your deadline and it doesn't matter. But this particularly works if you're trying to make a decision about something. If you remove yourself from it, I often find that the way to solve the problem just comes to me. For example, even when I'm trying to think about what to film, and sometimes I'm thinking, oh, I don't know what to film, I can't think of a video, I don't know. And I've discovered that the best thing to do is not to sort of sit there searching for video ideas and worrying about it, and is just say to myself, do you know what, if a video doesn't go up this week, it's okay, I'll wait and see what comes to me. And every single time something will just pop into my head, I'll go, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that. Or another example is if I've got a big decision to make and I don't know what to do, rather than sitting there and kind of really worrying about it, if I walk away from it, if I sleep on it, or I go for a walk, or just separate myself, even just for a short period of time, it's almost like a game perspective. And I kind of go, oh, actually that would work, why don't I do it that way? Another thing that can be helpful there is obviously talking to other people and asking their opinions, see what they think, see if they've got a useful idea. That can be on social media, it can be in person, and I often find that running something past somebody else and saying, oh, I've got to do this, I don't know what to do, what do you think? Even if they say something and you think, oh, I'm not doing that, that's helpful in itself. So yeah, I think stepping away, gathering opinions if you feel that you would like to and that won't add to your stress, and doing something else, just removing yourself from it. I just find that sometimes a solution comes to you without you having to go into that overthinking, panicky place. So I know that was quite a long-winded explanation of my point, but I've really found recently that this just really works. Just when something is really getting to me, even when I was trying to figure out a fix on the files that I was formatting for my most recent book, and I was trying lots of things and they weren't working, and I just walked away from it and it came to me. You know, it's like some divine inspiration, I don't know. So yeah, getting space on something that is starting to get to you is really, really helpful. My next tip is planning, using a planner, having some kind of organisational system that helps you, some kind of to-do list. So I have a bullet journal and that works really, really well for me because I can write down all the things I need to do in a day and I can tick them off, or I can move them to a later day and I can see the things that I didn't get done. I can then move them and do them at another time, or I can cross them out and say, actually, I don't need to do that anymore. And I get an idea of what my week looks like as well, of which days are busy and what needs to be done by when and all that kind of stuff. So I find bullet journaling helpful. When I was a teacher, I used to just have to-do lists, so I would have a master to-do list with everything I needed to do that I would tick off throughout the day, and then I would, essentially it was bullet journaling, but just with to-do lists, and then the next day I would transfer everything onto a new to-do list and start again. And that worked for me. But the reason why I think that this kind of planning helps is because you can put all of those things that are going around in your brain, like I must remember to do this and I must remember to do that and I've got that appointment at this time, and all of that stuff going around in your head, if you've actually physically written that down somewhere, it really, really helps. This obviously could be like a Google Calendar. I use a Google Calendar, but just kind of brain dumping all of this stuff that you're trying to hold on to, that again can raise your anxiety levels because you're just thinking, oh, I've got so much I've got to work through, so many things I've got to remember. If you write them down, you don't have to hold them in your head anymore because the piece of paper is looking after them, or the Google Calendar is looking after them. You just have to remember to actually refer back to it. So yeah, I find that kind of planning, organisational thing really helpful. Again, everybody's different in what system works for them, but if you find a system that works for you, then I do really think that that can help with anxiety a lot, because you know what you've got to do, when you've got to do it by, and you can just sort of work through it methodically and not start to panic. My next tip is something that lots and lots of people say, and I know that when I've been really struggling with anxiety and somebody goes, oh, you should get some exercise, I find it irritating, but it really helps. I would say actually when I'm in anxiety, so the other things I've said are kind of preventative for the most part, but when I am actually really in it and really struggling with it, exercise is absolutely the best thing that I can do to make myself feel better. For me personally, it needs to be quite difficult exercise because it switches my brain off, because I'm concentrating on the exercise. It's just a complete distraction technique. But of course, exercise releases endorphins as well. And actually, the exercise time is sometimes when those ideas come to me that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, for me, I find that I like to go running because I find that quite high intensity. I like to do karate because I find that that's a real like all body workout and I'm really distracted. You know, again, it's different for everybody. And for some people, you might prefer a sort of calming exercise because that helps you to bring your anxiety levels down. But for me, it needs to be a kind of high impact cardiovascular workout kind of thing. But when I'm not in the mood for that, because sometimes when you're really feeling anxious, it's absolutely the last thing that you want to do. Just getting outside really helps. Just going for a walk, or even just going and doing some jobs in the garden, or just getting out at all, leaving the house and distracting myself in some way, doing a bit of physical activity, even if it is really, really gentle, it just does wonders. And so, yeah, I would say if you can force yourself to just go for a walk or do some light activity or anything like that, it does really, really help with anxiety a lot. And actually as well, I find that if I've got something scheduled in, I'm going to be going to a particular, I'm going to be running that day. Actually, running doesn't count. I never look forward to running. I was going to say I look forward to it, but I never look forward to running. But if I'm going to go to karate, I'll be looking forward to it all day, and then that helps too. So yeah, if it also gives you something to look forward to, that's like a bonus exercise point. Then the next one, again, this is another of those ones that people say and you think, yeah, it's easy for you to say, is sleep. When anxiety is actually making you struggle to sleep, this is not a helpful suggestion for somebody to say that sleep helps your anxiety. Well, yeah, but I can't sleep because I have anxiety. But that said, sleep has such a huge impact on how your brain works, and getting enough sleep, getting enough rest just massively impacts your mood and your energy levels and all of that stuff. And so I just think that the more that you can do to try and get enough sleep, anything that you can do, even if it's just to get a little bit more sleep, can be helpful. When I'm really struggling to sleep, sometimes even just lying down and closing my eyes for 10 minutes will help. But, you know, all of the things that people say, like trying to have a routine of sleeping and having your cues that it's sleep time. I personally have to have a sleep mask because if it's light outside, I can't sleep at all. You know, just all the things that help you to sleep, try and do those. And if it just means you get a little bit more sleep, even if it's a tiny bit more, it will still help. If you need to nap in the day, fine. But unfortunately, I think it's one of those things where if you start struggling to sleep, you then can't sleep, and then because you can't sleep, you feel anxious, and then you can't sleep. that can be one of the problems with it. So it really is kind of a preventative thing a lot of the time. But if you are in that space, anything you can do to try and get some sleep in, I think will help. I certainly find it helpful. But I know that it's often easier said than done. But I will do things like making sure that I get a couple of early nights, or sometimes, but you know, I'll do things like make sure that I have a couple of early nights if I know that I've got stuff that means I'm going to be missing sleep, because I know that if I get really, really tired, then that's going to be a problem. And if I am really struggling to sleep, I do things like listening to podcasts, listening to things that help me to just stop thinking and just get to sleep. That's my tool that works for me, but I think it's a case of discovering the things that can help you when you're struggling to sleep. But yeah, sleep, just try and get enough sleep if you can, and if you're not getting enough sleep, try and improve your sleep, because it just has a massive impact. I'm sorry, that was rambly as well. And then my last one, and I know this is ending on another of those ones that people say and you just think, yeah, is to eat well. Eating healthily and in a routine, and not just eating junk food. And again, as a writer, it's really easy to just, you know, have the snacks nearby, and working from home means that the food is in your house, so it can be really difficult not to just snack and, you know, eat junk food and not look after yourself. And eating well is also going to help your mental health. So yeah, I think just keeping on top of having a good diet helps your brain to work, and yeah, it's going to help your anxiety as well. So yeah, that is all of my tips. I hope that some of those tips are helpful. I know that a lot of those things are kind of general and would help anybody that has anxiety, but I just think as a writer and as somebody who's working from home, a lot of the things that can make you feel anxious can be really heightened. You're working on your own, you've not got other people to kind of run things by, you're you know, spending a lot of time by yourself, you're overthinking things, you're you know, in the same environment all the time, and all of those things can make anxiety a lot harder. So yeah, I hope that those were helpful, and if you have any tips of things that you find really useful for dealing with anxiety, please do leave them in the comments. So please hit like if you found that useful, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.